Hello, gang. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter what time zone you're in. I hope this finds you well. My name's Dan Infinity. You can call me Dan. I'm a Twitch streamer. I've been a partner for a couple years, but I've been on the platform for about 8. Before that, I was a musician in the School of Rock and Roll for 10, traveling around the Midwest. On and off again, I do various podcast projects, so you've probably heard some of them. I'm assuming that if you're listening to this, you have probably come here for Destiny news. That's not going away, and we'll get to it here in a bit. But I've also produced shows like Beardo. Before that, it was called Side Quest Sunday, in which I would interview people from around the community, not necessarily about Destiny, but like primarily Destiny. I was a producer, editor, booker, co-host on the Planet Destiny podcast for several years. So yeah, Destiny's in my bones. I know some of you guys are probably like, hey, Dan, why were you gone for like a month and a half? And I'll tell you why. I got busy between the holidays and everything else that came with that, as well as basically a month of streaming for charity. I didn't really have a lot of downtime on top of my workload, which we'll also get to that in a little bit too. So one of the big things that I'm most proud of during our time is raising almost $7,000 between 2 different charitable actions. So December 28th, we ran the Feeding Frenzy campaign for Second Helpings. We raised just over $3,000 for them. And then I was approached to be a featured creator for the Bungie Foundation's Game to Give campaign. That was a lot of fun. We raised close to $3,500 for them. Now, with all that and the ever-stretching news cycle of Destiny 2, it didn't really have the bandwidth to really commit to a weekly show of Destiny news. So the unfortunate side effect of that is that I left you guys in the dark and didn't tell you what I was doing, and that's on me. My apologies for being gone so long. But I've also been thinking, I really love Destiny, and I always have. We've had our shaky moments as a community, and sometimes the news cycle dries up just because there's long stretches of time. I think this thing behind me here is going to say at some point that it's like 120 some odd days until the final shape. And that's a long time. That is a long time to do strictly Destiny news in this feed. And I feel like we can do something a little bit more creative than just show up every week and be like, well, I got my pinnacles and I'm out. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that here. So what is Dan Infinity's Infiniden? Well, it will contain Destiny Digest. It'll still show up in this feed. I'll still be interviewing people from around the community every once in a while. I'll still have panels. I'll still be taking your intake as well as and giving my opinions on the game. I know that was something that came up in my 2023 year in review from you guys, is that you wanted to hear a little bit more of my opinions on a thing rather than me just straight spitting the news. So I'm going to try to do a little bit more of that. So Destiny Digest is not going away. In this feed, you're going to see a few other different formats. This is kind of inspired by comedian Kurt Brownoller's The K-Hole. It was a show that he did way back in the day that also had multiple formats. If you're interested in that, check out your podcast platform of choice. I'm sure that those episodes are still up. I miss having conversations that aren't strictly about Destiny in this space. I used to do a show called Beardo and Side Quest Sunday. We would interview people, sometimes do like a little 5-minute RPG at the end. And I think I'm going to return back to the basics of doing that here in the channel. So when there's not an Infiniden, when there's not a Destiny Digest, there will be a conversation pit or another form of the show here in your feed. So conversation pit will be one-on-one conversations with people, not necessarily in the Destiny community, but in the gaming community, to learn a little bit more about them, to learn a little bit more about what they create, and to see what drives their spark. I want to have more panel shows as well. So I'm thinking of inviting some folks from my stream team Beardo, like a panel show of topics from around the Twitch sphere. And why was that so hard to say? The Twitch sphere, God. Okay. Anyways, so maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll have conversations with the Beardo team around stuff that happens on Twitch. If you're in my Discord server, discord.gg/Danfinity, we just started a game club as well. And I'm going to see if the folks that are in the game club are comfortable recording those conversations, because we're going to be talking about several games over the next few months. This month, if you're listening to this today, the poll will be up in the Discord server. We'll either be checking out Cocoon, Jusant, Phantom Abyss, or Planet of Lana for the month of February. And I'd love to record those conversations, throw them up in the feed for you to take part in them. It's kind of like a book club in that way. At the end of the day, I really just want this to be a connection point. I know that Destiny is what brought us together, and I'm still making Destiny content. I still enjoy the game, but who knows what happens after Final Shape? There's been a lot of news lately about the changing of the guard, which I'm sure is going to be in great hands. But yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to see. I'm really stretching this year to try to be more creative and more variety driven than I have in the past. But I want to stretch out. I want to get weird with it. And I hope that you're along for the ride on that front. So I'm sorry for being gone. Danfinity's Infiniden is going to be multifaceted, multi-show platform feed for you to listen to. Destiny Digest isn't going anywhere. Yeah, and I'm focusing more on variety. That's basically the recap of all of this. So I appreciate you guys coming through and listening to this. If you're listening to this, as always, you can find me on socials at DanfinityGG. And if not DanfinityGG, then just drop the 2 G's off of it. You can also find me on Twitch 3 days a week, twitch.tv/Danfinity. And join the Discord server, discord.gg/Danfinity. We have an LFG in there. We have wonderful folks who are helpful. Some of them are funny. Some of them are funny. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you find what you're grinding for.